You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin Cleric. I am flying solo today, and pardon the pun, because I am talking to a former American Air Force veteran, Adam DeRito, who is our American political correspondent. Adam, you're very welcome back to the Irish Political Roundup.
Well, it's always a pleasure to come on and talk to the people of Ireland and coming on your podcast and giving you guys a great insight what's going on in the US. So thanks for having me on.
It is our absolute delight to have you on and keeping it, because where else do we get this information? Because certainly not
Google.
from mainstream media.
Yeah, Google, which is also a problem, right? So yeah, no, it's good that we're connecting our countries through these political conversations because the US political system is very complicated to understand. And I think unless you have a good insight to somebody who actually is involved in US politics like I am, it's kind of hard to differentiate the truth from, the cannon fodder. So
And Adam, just to remind our viewers and listeners that you are also the author of the DeRito bill, the
yes, I
DeRito
am.
Act
So
bill.
I am. I work with a lobbyist here in Washington D.C., and I'm the author of the DeRito Act, which is basically a way for reforming our military to make sure that military officers, NCOs, or military members cannot retaliate against another member for reporting sexual assault, harassment, or misconduct by falsifying their mental health records, which ironically is not currently illegal in the U.S. military and has caused a lot of problems in the last several decades. And it's something that I'm fighting for to change for here in the U.S. government and the U.S. military. And I'm hopefully under the new leadership that we have here, I'm a lot more hopeful that this bill is going to get passed. But once again, it's a political game, but we're a lot more hopeful this year. So
You
yeah.
talked about special needs and JFK. Robert Kennedy Jr. is also he's also doing the health looking after them, making America healthy again. And he's also Donald Trump announced yesterday being put in charge of children with special needs.
That's great. I mean, RFK has he wants to do a lot of research on vaccines. He wants to do a lot of research on our poisoning our food, like with red 40 dyes and things like that. And I think it's great that we're looking at what actually has affected the health of Americans over the last several decades. I mean, one thing that has definitely killed a lot of Americans, what causes a lot of our health issues, why we have such a massive obesity rate, is the sugar lobby, right? Ever since the sugar lobby came into the United States and mandated sugar be high fructose corn syrup and all these things be put into our food is just not as healthy. Like I said, I've been to plenty of other countries where the food is healthier. I actually lose weight by eating food in other countries. And then you come to the United States and you have like, one thing here and you get sick and bloated and you get fat, right? Is because we are very good at mass producing cheap food, but not healthy food. And I think RFK is really going to change all that around, reduce our, mental disabilities from things that might be affected by that, from obesity and sugar and things like that, and cancer, and vaccine injuries, which are definitely a thing. RFK himself is a product of a vaccine injury. That's why his voice is so messed up, right? So I mean, there are good vaccines. I'm not anti-vaccine, like polio, obviously. Like those are meningitis. Like these are things that have been proven over several decades of trials and tribulations. But it is very concerning when we are one of the only countries in the world that are allowed to advertise vaccines and medications on TV, right? And in a lot of countries, it's illegal. And I know RFK is going to be pushing for that so that medications and the pharmaceutical industry cannot be advertised on American television. And I think that's a great step forward to making America healthy again. And I fully support these initiatives. So.
And I think that America, especially with the Trump administration, a woman who produced a woman-to-woman show on local radio, a radio format for women's issues, and on my
Mhm.
Competent Women Island. I got very disillusioned an awful lot because I was looking for real women who weren't a part of the fake feminism that came out of Hollywood and
Right.
the
Mhm.
agenda there. And I found it very hard to actually go, oh God, what woman inspires me now? But I'm looking now I have a few ladies who here in Ireland, but one or two, and it's really disheartening for me to say that. But what I'm noticing is, and what's coming out at the moment is some very strong, independent, very able women come to the forefront, like Susie Wise. I used to watch the
Mhm.
MAGA rallies, and I used to wonder, who is this lady? She just walked into the rooms and stood to the side. And I used to go, I was intrigued. I wonder who she is. And then it transpired who she was, and what she did to help President Trump win the elections. And also Tulsi Gabbard. I
Yep,
mean,
Tulsi Gabbard's amazing. But even like JD Vance's wife,
yeah,
Melania Trump, Susie Wiles. We have all these strong, independent women, and I fully support that initiative, right? Who are confident in their femininity and the fact that they are complementing the American government by using their effectiveness and what they're good at, right? And I think it's an amazing thing to see that real women are being encouraged to participate, and it's okay to be feminine, and it's
yes.
okay to be supportive of the nuclear family unit, and it's okay to have children, and it's okay to have these discussions because for so many years the American population has been beat down with these. I don't want to repeat, what JD Vance said about, childless cat ladies, but I mean, it was a problem, right? It was a problem in this country where, women were so independent that they weren't having families and they weren't participating in their local government as much as they were, and yeah, that's great. I mean, you can do that too if you want. It's a free country. But at the end of the day, the only people that are going to exist in the next 100 years are the families having children, and we need to support the majority. So yes, those people do exist in a minority, and that's fine. You can do what you want, but at the end of the day, the individual rights of one person shouldn't trump that of 100,000 who want to live, and raise families and raise children and do all those things. It should be encouraged, and I'm glad to see that this administration is very child friendly. You see kids running around all the time. Elon Musk's kids jumping on the helicopter with President Trump. Like it's a very family positive promoted administration that I have never seen in any section of government throughout my time here. So
It was like in the inauguration, you saw J.D. Vance and his wife and their children at
yeah,
the
just
inauguration, and it was
tired and
really
cranky,
sweet.
and you're seeing what it's like to be a parent, and that's
Yeah,
great. There's great transparency. Yeah, I'm not a parent yet, but I mean, being a parent's hard. Your kids are tired, they're screaming and yelling, and they're tugging on your shoes and everything else, and that's awesome. That's great. You know what I mean? Like, and it's great to see that President Trump and Vice President JD Vance are showcasing that to the American people that it's okay to be a tired, exhausted parent, and
yes,
also try to be the president and vice president of the United States at the same time, right?
yeah. So what do you see next happening, or any new developments coming out of United States and the White House? Oh, before we go,
Mhm.
the press office of the White House.
Yeah. It's great. If you don't
Very,
acknowledge that the Gulf
very,
of America exists, you're not even allowed in the room anymore. It's great.
I think she's awesome. I actually think she is
She's hilarious.
she's brilliant.
No,
And
it's great, and it's really great that the Trump administration is putting a positive foot forward in crushing the fake news.
yeah,
Right? It's like if you're going to come out here and talk crap, you better bring your facts because if not, you're just going to get the smackdown. And it's good because I think we need to be more blunt and transparent with the American people. And this administration has been so transparent with the American people. It's almost like a comedy show. It's like watching a late night comedy show every time you watch these things. But it's great seeing that the corrupt media is being put in their place for once. So.
it's like time that we had, and I know that I was on the webinar recently, and we were talking about the media. And I
Mhm.
actually just said, when I gave it was from America and Ireland, and I just said, it was an Irish lady who was hosting it, and I just said, I find that the Irish media is very biased against Donald J. Trump and the Trump administration.
Of course they are.
And we are just pro-Biden. And, and that has been the
Weird.
case.
It makes no
And
sense to me.
yeah, and that is why I love talking to you. I love giving the perspective of a different opinion that has been given to the Irish nation of
Yeah.
everything negative, and where that people are not getting to know, like the whole thing now here in Ireland. No one's talking about the F-47. No one's talking about Space Force. No one's talking about the American military. No one's talking about why. They're all talking about, oh, terrible, the Department of Education has been dismantled. No one's talking about why. Well, Ireland can't talk because we, in the last budget, gave 9 million
Mhm.
euros for phone pouches for schools. 9 million. When they got so much going on, issues within our educational system, we gave 9 million for a pouch. So I really enjoy talking to you, and I love listening to your perspective and your opinions, and love to hear the other point of view, which is not getting out here in the Irish media, what is really happening in America. And I really do appreciate you taking the time because you are a busy man.
I am. I actually don't even know how I have time to sleep anymore at this point. I wish there needs to be like 25 hours in a day. But no, I love coming on this show and really giving a good perspective of the Trump administration from the inside perspective of what I do in government, political, military, oil and gas, and everything else. Because if people like me don't tell the truth and express what's going on in America, the only thing you're going to be resulted with is the mainstream media, which is massively corrupt and is basically a giant information operation, psychological operation for people who do not have your best interest in mind. So it is an absolute pleasure, Rosen, to come on the show whenever I can and have these conversations. And it's a pleasure to talk to your audience. And they can reach out to me anytime. Instagram is one of the easiest ways to reach me. It's adam.derito2010. You can find me on X as well, Adam DeRito. You can look me up on LinkedIn as well. Shoot me an email, aderito@sekur.com. That's my business email. And I'm happy to answer questions, come on any shows, and have these discussions in the future, as you know. So.
And as usual, we'll put all the links to your social media if anybody wants to reach out. And you never know, maybe somebody who has a military background or knowledge on everything that you were talking about military might go, okay, Roshan, we'll show you what we should be talking about. But
Sure, anytime.
it's really good to get, maybe because all my family, my father's family was Navy. My mother's, although they were Irish, they were Army and Air Force. And
Yeah.
then my son's in the army. So it's always nice. I grew up going on ships and everything else when my father was when I was younger. But so it's always interesting to know what is happening in the military, because we don't here in Ireland thank our members of our Irish Defence Forces enough. We don't say to them, thank you for your service enough. We don't give them. Over the years, we have stopped as a nation in our society supporting and thanking and really, really being so grateful to our Defence Force members. So it's always lovely to speak to you, Adam, because Paul would be so jealous he's not here. And so yeah, you got me flying solo tonight, pardon the pun. But no, so what do you think is going to happen? Just briefly, what do you see coming up next in the next couple of weeks, do you think? What
Well,
should we be looking out for?
Trump is definitely determined to make sure his first 100 days are extremely positive. And we got a couple more days here until we reach that first 100 days of analysis. I think he's done a massive, effective job. But I would say after his first 100 days in his presidency, we're going to get to the more contentious issues that Americans demand a response from. One of my biggest concerns is accountability for Afghanistan. I know that is going to be a very contentious issue here in the veteran community. We demand a lot of people get fired and that we are made whole again from that entire disastrous operation. So I know Pete Hegseth has talked about the tribunals and the investigations coming forward, but I believe that they're waiting till after the first 100 days because obviously I don't think it's all going to go positive. When you start firing a lot of generals and removing people out of the military, everything else, you're going to get some contentious fighting in Congress for sure. And also moving forward from there, from the military perspective, is Doge continuing to make these cuts, continuing to get rid of federal jobs, continuing to do force structure realignment in the military and everything else. So these are going to be hard pills to swallow for a lot of American people. We're going to cut a lot of jobs. We're going to cut a lot of funding. But in the long run, these small pains are going to have significant long-term gain. But I would say for the Irish people to expect that after the first 100 days, we're going to start getting to more contentious issues that are not popular amongst all Americans. And it's going to be very interesting to see how those develop. So
It's going to be very interesting. But President Donald Trump also mentions April 2nd an awful lot, because he says he doesn't want to mention April 1st because he doesn't want to be seen as part of April Fools. So what do you
right.
expect to happen after as well, April 2nd?
Well, I know he mentioned the other day that all the people who have been firebombing Teslas here in the United States are going to be charged
Yeah.
with domestic terrorism and put up for 20-year prison sentences with no pardons. And I fully encourage that. They wanted to charge the January 6 protesters with years in prison and ruin their lives. But these people are actually setting fires to dealerships and causing, and the definition of terrorism is, political or physical action that are engaging enough to change governmental structures, and that is the definition of terrorism. And by lighting things on fire, who are owned and produced by an American, immigrant such as Elon Musk, who has provided millions of jobs around the country in order to gain, political fanfare, you're going to see a lot of contentious issues come up. Like I mentioned before, there are Democrat operations going on even in my county right now, where 11,000 people showed up to a protest against Donald Trump and Elon Musk for Bernie Sanders and AOC in my hometown here. And these are concerning. They are gearing up for the 2026 elections. And what Republicans and conservatives here in the U.S. need to do is we can't take Donald Trump's election as a win. Yes, it was good. It was a good temporary stop point, but we need to keep pushing forward and finding good candidates to run for office in 2026. We need to counter these terroristic narratives by the Democrats lighting our communities on fire. We need to ensure we're removing more illegal immigrants and supporting those federal officers trying to do that. And like I said, it's we can gain unity in this country again, but we need to work collectively together. And for those who don't want to work together, we need to make sure that they can't participate in the system anymore because they're hurting us. They're not helping anybody. So
I we're probably running out of time, but I would love to maybe in the next interview we do with you is talk about the very brave, courageous lady who I think she's from Colorado and is in
Tina
jail.
Peters. Tina Peters. Yeah. So she's a major issue right now here in our state. You know, even the Republican Party is fighting over who supports Tina the most, which is a joke because you should not take somebody's 9-year prison sentence as a personal talking point for you getting elected into a state office. I think that's a joke and an embarrassment to the state. It's something I'm dealing with personally here right now. Unfortunately, Tina Peters was convicted by the state. So the only way that she can get a pardon and get out of prison is Governor Polis. But Pam Bondi has issued a DOJ inquiry into the state. So really the only way that Tina Peters is going to get out of jail is if Donald Trump's DOJ investigates this personally. Next week, which is going to be interesting, we have our state elections for the Republican Party here, which is the biggest offices here in the state. Outside of the congressional members and Senate members. And Steve Bannon is coming into town on the 28th. And Steve Bannon is basically going to come here and kind of do a temperature check of what's going on in Colorado. We're going to do some fundraising. But there's already been Antifa riots. They had to move the venue because there was so many terrorist threats, from the FBI against the venue for Steve Bannon. So there are a lot of ludicrous, liberal, psychopathic Democrats that are willing to hurt Americans, burn down infrastructure in order for us to express our First Amendment rights, and for Steve Bannon to even speak to the Republican Party in order to change this around. And it's very contentious with Tina Peters and Steve right now, but I'm hoping that people can see that a 9-year prison sentence for a woman in her 70s who lost a son as a Navy SEAL in the global war on terror, which they voted to send us to, for exposing election corruption in the state of Colorado, which is a major issue. Jenna Griswold is the Secretary of State, and she was caught with, basically messing with the voting machines and hooking them up to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So our elections are completely compromised in the state. They cannot be trusted. That's why we are pushing for voter ID and paper ballots in the future. But that's a hard thing to do. And, we hope that Tina does get released from prison with the intervention of the Trump administration. And moving forward, conservatives in the state of Colorado need to unite, and they need to show up to these events. They need to buy a ticket to the gala for Steve Bannon next week to support our fundraising initiatives to get good candidates elected into office to make sure that this corruption by these radical Democrats from California do not continue to permeate this state and violate the American Constitution.
Gosh, there's so much over here that, Ireland is not getting to know what is happening in America. I don't think very few people would even know Tina Peters' name or why she's in, isn't it what you call, Americans call the gold star mother, is it?
Yes. So she did lose a son in combat, and she's been imprisoned for exposing election corruption in the state, and the Democrats don't like that.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And
there
are people who rape, murder, and traffic drugs and human traffic out here that get less prison sentences than Tina Peters did for exposing election campaign fraud.
Well, Ireland was on top tier 2 of the child trafficking watch list and was only taking off the watch list due to the COVID restrictions, and was never put, as far as I'm was aware, never put back on. And we had open borders. We only had 2 kilometers and 5 kilometers travel restrictions. I couldn't go from this side of the town to the other side of Kilkenny. Kilkenny's like a small village without leaving my travel restrictions. And yet we had open sea, air, and land borders for human trafficking and child trafficking. And I
Yeah.
just think that's another program that's not talked about in the Irish media.
No, I
The
mean
child
the U.S.
trafficking.
in the U.S. we're like the #1 human trafficking country in the world, right? And hopefully Tom Holman is going to be shutting that down, and he's doing a great job at it. We've had
Yes.
like a 97% reduction rate in illegal crossings since President Trump was elected, and he was allowed to do his job. We need to continue that. Human trafficking and drug trafficking is unacceptable in my mind. We authorized the U.S. military to conduct operations against the cartels, which are some of the most evil, well-funded terrorist organizations in the world. That's why we designated them as a terrorist organization. And, that's going to be a big fight moving forward. But, we need to do the right thing. We need to be moral, ethical humans. That's what we do as the leaders of freedom in the world. And we need to hold that standard.
Well, Adam DeRito, I probably have got taken you well over your hour, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody's saying, Roisin, you haven't a clue what you're talking about for the military, but you know what? It's getting it out there. And maybe other people who know more about military operations or veterans might get in touch with you and have you on their podcast as well. And that's what we'd love. And any other political programs or any Irish podcasts, do get in touch with Adam DeRito if you want to know more what's happening in the United States of America. And Adam DeRito, as always, thank you for taking the time to come and speak to the Irish Political Roundup.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
And thank you, the listeners and viewers, for taking the time to watch this video. Until next time.